We were going to be talking about the timeline argument, and then I show up, and that's not the topic we were supposed to discuss. So we had to pull some audibles, but it was good. It was a good session.
Yeah, I was in it. It was good.
We were able to share a lot. So yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. So.
Now, you also, well, first of all, just so our viewers and listeners understand, in 2024, you're going to come out with a book that has 13 arguments for the reliability of Scripture. Is that right? Or
yes.
the New Testament?
13 arguments for the reliability of the New Testament.
Okay.
And it's designed to be a short book, about 150 to 170 pages. Each chapter is a standalone chapter, so you can just pick it up and read those chapters. But my background kind of led to this book. I remember, for example, I didn't understand that Paul, I knew he was a persecutor of the church, but I didn't realize he wrote books of the New Testament until I was in college.
Really?
So I was like, I still know that feeling, and how important it was to realize, wow, I'm really paying attention to his words now, because this guy used to persecute the church, and he's writing for the church now. What happened to him? And so going through school, those were some of the questions I had. Obviously, the resurrection was one of the big questions that I had. And there's a story to how I met Habermas through hockey. And but as we studied the resurrection, I started just seeing all these areas of reliability for the New Testament, and they're often just so spread apart here and there, or sometimes just the academics talk about them. And I'm like, man, these just need to be synthesized, put together, made readable, so someone can pick up and just read and go, oh, this is an argument for the reliability of the New Testament. This is good. Okay, they're dated early. That's good too. They're all before the end of the first century. Wow. Okay, and that's what skeptics grant too. It's not quite a minimal facts approach to the reliability of the New Testament, but it kind of is. So we have multiple lines of evidence there, and you'll see throughout, there's skeptics, there's believers, all sorts making comments in support of these.
Now, we probably won't get to all 13 today. When the book comes out, we'll have you on again to go through some of them. But before we get into some of the 13, you have been working probably as hard on Gary Habermas's magnum opus as he has. You're on volume 3 of how many?
4.
There's going to be 4.
Total.
Just give us an overview of what each volume contains.
Oh, yeah. So, and it's funny because we've been working, and we'd go to Habermas's house, and we'd be working on it together and trying to do some of the edits, and then his wife would chime in the background and be like, you two got to get it worked out. Try to stay focused. But volume 1 is coming out in January 15th. It's available on pre-order now. 1,072 pages. Huge, and it's just on the evidences. Historical method, the evidences, and it's full of all the multiple lines of evidence for each of his minimal facts and additional facts. And that's going to be just volume 1.
Okay, before our listeners, what are the minimal facts that Gary says most scholars agree with?
Yes, and he'll have 2 sets of this. The minimal facts are going to be Jesus' death, the appearances, it's proclaimed early, it's the conversion of James, Jesus' skeptical brother, the conversion of Paul.
So you got 5 of them.
5 of them. I may be missing one because my memory's not so tight because we're on volume 3 now.
Okay.
Once we turn that, we actually turned in volume 1 at the start of SCS a year and a half ago.
All right.
And we've done a whole nother 1,000 pages on volume 2 since then. And then there's a set of additional facts after those 5. And the 6th one is
the empty tomb one of them?
That's in the additional facts. And there's about 20 arguments or so for the empty tomb that he discusses.
Okay.
A lot of them. And then we also have the centrality of the resurrection. It started in Jerusalem. The church began and grew. The transformation of the disciples, that was the 6th minimal fact, by the way, the transformation of the disciples, such that they were willing to suffer and die.
So you got Jesus' death, number 1.
Yes.
You got the appearances of him resurrecting, number 2. Number 3 is
the transformation.
The transformation of the apostles, so that they were followers of Yahweh, and suddenly now they're believing a man claimed to be God and rose from the dead. You got the conversion of James and the conversion of Paul.
Yes, those are the 6.
All right, I'm missing one. Which one did I miss?
6. Jesus' death.
Yep.
Appearances. It was proclaimed early.
Proclaimed early. That's what we missed.
Proclaimed
early.
All
right. So those 6.
Yep.
More than 90% of scholars, whether they're atheists or Christians, agree with.
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay.
Sir. No, it's a given. It's and they're well attested. So well attested.
All right. And then volume 2 of the magnum opus.
Yes.
What's in that?
If you had any doubts on the first part, the second part deals with all the alternative theories,
Okay.
including David Hume's arguments, miracles, questions of that nature. Then he goes into all sorts of alternative theories, and that's going to be about 1,000 pages on that. And what's interesting, too, is he doesn't just give his responses to some of these alternative theories, but he also gives the history of them. So in the 18th century, you had liberals, German liberals, giving that's what they called themselves too. They gave these alternative theories, but if you didn't give the same alternative theory as someone else, well, they're going to critique your alternative theory. So you have these two guys, one guy may give swoon, one guy may give hallucination theory, and they attack each other, and they show the holes in their theories. So Habermas gives that history, and it's called, I think the chapter titles are Liberals versus Liberals, and then Conservatives versus Liberals.
All right.
So a pretty cool history and development, which leads to where we are now, which is why a lot of scholars don't take a naturalistic theory these days. We're starting to see them pull back on that and just say, I don't really know what to say happened.
So the evidence is such that they agree with these 6 facts, but how to interpret why these 6 facts are facts, they punt.
Right. Because the naturalistic theories fail to account for all of those facts.
Right.
There's problems with each of them.
Okay.
So when we have this bedrock and you put forward an alternative theory, they're challenged by that historical bedrock. And it's fascinating because it's just 6 facts, and they're easy ones for us to grasp. I grasp them as a hockey player, so we can all grab them. And then if you start having those questions, you go, okay, well, it doesn't explain Paul's conversion. Why did Paul wouldn't have converted? He wouldn't have hallucinated like these guys did. He's not in that position. Neither would James. James was a skeptic, according to Mark and John.
Right. And then the empty tomb would seem to also
Yes.
create a problem for the hallucination theory, and the fact that it started in Jerusalem, right? I mean,
Yes, it's not proclaimed in Greece, right?
Right,
It's
yeah.
proclaimed in Jerusalem, where they could check and verify these things, as opposed to some distant land. So that's huge, but we kind of take that for granted and overlook its significance.
yeah, it is interesting that these these New Testament scholars who are not Christians are now avoiding saying what they think happened. They used to say, what, hallucinations? Was that the top
Hallucinations
one?
are probably one of the leading ones, and now it's kind of, I don't know, and maybe if we put 2 or 3 bad theories together, maybe we can get one working theory.
What about the 3rd volume? What's
The
in the
third volume is going to be, so Habermas has referenced how he tracks a lot of scholars. This is going to be a lot of scholars who he's tracked over the years, and I've worked on a portion of this document for the past decade. He's worked on it since 1975. So I jumped in about a decade ago and added to it. And it is a collection of where scholars are on all these different subjects. So it's not really too much of his thoughts, but it's really highlighting where we put these people in these thoughts.
All right, we're going to be right back with Dr. Ben Shaw. We're going to talk about the 13 evidences or reasons to believe the New Testament documents are historically reliable here on I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. We're back in 2 minutes.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I had numerous credit cards, and I was struggling with paying them off.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813 to talk to a certified counselor.
I had heard about Trinity, so I made the call. They took care of all of my credit cards, and now I am completely debt-free.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
The people at Trinity are very friendly. They will do whatever you need them to do in order for you to feel better about being in a very difficult place.
If your debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
My name is Ann, and I'm debt-free for keeps.
1-800-788-1813.
When things go wrong at your house, are you afraid to talk about it with others? Afraid it'll make you look like a bad parent? Hi, I'm Mark Gregston with Parenting Today's Teens. Proverbs 11 verse 14 says this, "For lack of guidance, a nation falls, but many advisors make victory sure." This is wise counsel for parents, because struggling silently with your teen could mean disaster in the family. Sit down with someone you trust, or collect a group of parents who are facing the same issues with their kids. Talk about the struggle you face and listen to advice. In the process, you'll likely have your eyes open to a few blind spots. Without the guidance of trustworthy friends, your family might might silently implode. Take Proverbs 11 to heart and seek wise advisors.
Mark Gregston has more helpful resources for you at parentingtodaysteens.org.
Welcome back to I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist this Monday night on our YouTube channel. Also our website, crossexamine.org, will be streaming Lesson 11 of Digging Up the Bible. We're looking at the top archaeological discoveries in the Bible. We're about to get into the Kings era. We did Joshua and Judges last time. It'll be streamed live on our YouTube channel. It won't be on YouTube very long, so you may want to watch it while it is live. And then next week, we're going to be at the University of Cincinnati on November 2nd. All the details on our website. A couple of days later, November 4th, we'll be in Nashville, Tennessee for the Unshaken Conference. That's me, Elisa Childers, and Natasha Crane. Go to unshakenconference.com if you want more on that. We're going to go to 4 different churches next year for Unshaken. Again, if you'd like to bring Unshaken to your church, just go to the unshakenconference.com. I'm talking to Dr. Ben Shaw today, who has his PhD in theology from Liberty University, and he's been working with Dr. Gary Habermas, who is the world champion, heavyweight champion of the resurrection. And we were talking just before the break about the 4 volumes of Gary's magnum opus. We talked about volumes 1, 2, and 3. What's in volume 4 that hasn't been written yet, or is it being written now?
It is not. It's been written, but not written.
All right.
Kind of an odd way to say that, but volume 1 is evidence. Volume 2 is alternative theories. Volume 3 is where scholars are at on various different subjects. Volume 4 is pastoral and practical implications, because the resurrection is not just some event that happened,
Sure.
but it has practical implications for the present. So volume 4 is going to be really interesting to see that, because we want to live that out.
That's right. And Gary has personal experience.
Yes, he
His
does.
wife died when she was 43, I think. And I remember him talking about how the resurrection was a comfort to him, knowing that one day they would both be resurrected.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Gary's not just a scholar. He's a guy that is a real human being who anyone who knows him loves him. He's just a wonderful guy. Now, let's go to your work, Ben. You're about to release in the coming year a book about 13. What's the title of the book? Is it 13?
Trustworthy, 13 arguments for the reliability of the New Testament.
All right, trustworthy.
Yes.
Let's go through a few of them. We're not going to get to all of them today, but if you had to talk to somebody about this issue, where would you start?
Well, there's a number of, so obviously there's 13
Yeah.
at least arguments. And a lot of times in reliability books, we'll see textual criticism. So we do cover that because it's important. But I wanted to make sure to go beyond that. And one of the objections I think that Christians get is they just get the stereotype that New Testament's not reliable. And so historical criteria have come a long way in showing that there's multiple points of convergence in the New Testament that are reliable. And so historical criteria, the best thing about them is they're intuitive. We do them every day. We just don't call them historical criteria in some academic way. If there's a car accident, we just look, did you see what happened? Did you see what happened? I saw what happened. Oh, you're a witness. Okay, you did too? Oh, now we have multiple independent witnesses. But we don't think like that, but that's what historians do. So when you're doing historical work, you want to find multiple sources. So that's one historical criterion that we can use. But there's others. We want early testimony too. We don't want something from centuries after the fact,
Right.
like we have with Alexander the Great's biographies, for example.
Sure.
All of Jesus's, not all of them, canonical gospels, that is, they're all within the first century, all within the lifetime of eyewitnesses. And so that's significant. That's not an insignificant factor. So we have early. We also talk about dating in the book too, not just of the Gospels, but also of Paul's writings. We want eyewitnesses. That's another one. How about embarrassing testimony? If I'm the one driving and my wife is in the car next to me and she's telling the officer, "It's my husband who did it. He did it." That doesn't look good for me. She's offering up something that's gonna, she's embarrassed about what her husband had just done, but it's a confession. So that's another criterion. We see that in the New Testament. Jesus' crucifixion was immensely taboo at that time. The Gospels actually present the most detailed crucifixion accounts in all of ancient history. So why did they do that? Why would they present something that shouldn't even be in the thoughts of Roman citizens, was what Cicero says. So I really like historical criteria just because they're so common and we do them every day, so we can easily grasp them and then we can apply them to the New Testament ourselves.
Let's talk about early first. Why do we think the New Testament documents are written early? And when you say early, what do you mean by early? How early is early? Because some people would even say, well, if it's written down 20 years later, that's not early. What would you say to that?
Yes. So the first comment would be in Bart Ehrman's book, Did Jesus Exist? He uses a century as a time span. So he counts sources within a century of Jesus' death. So 100 years in the ancient world, they don't have computers. This is just making me think. Habermas's big volume on 1,000 pages, he types with 2 fingers. So, we today, we all use 10 of our fingers. We're 80% more efficient. But in the ancient world, the ability to have paper, to write things, it takes time, it takes money, it takes skills, because not everyone can read. So 20 years, and especially like we just mentioned with Alexander the Great, our earliest biographies for him were centuries later. So
And
20
people don't really question.
No, I
did,
rarely,
even though he did pretty amazing, he accomplished amazing feats for a man who was in his early 30s, conquered most of the known world at the time. And nobody doubts that those amazing feats were done by him, even though the biographies were centuries after he
close to
existed.
3 centuries for the first one. The first one's not the best of them. Plutarch and Arrian typically considered to have the better ones. So that's interesting. But what's really cool with the New Testament, we have the Gospels, all within the lifetime of eyewitnesses. So, we have people writing biographies of World War II decades after, and they can recall vividly because those are vivid things that had happened. They're major events. I can't tell you the color of the car I parked next to because it's a trivial thing, right? We can only have recall so much, and the things that are important are what stand out to us. So we have the Gospels, but we got Paul's writings even earlier, and we talk about these dates, but we also talk about creeds in the book. And creeds, there's dozens of creeds in the New Testament. It's just hard for us to pick up on them at times for a variety of reasons.
Explain a creed for our audience.
Yes, 1 Corinthians 15 is probably one of the most evident creeds because Paul specifically says, I passed on to you that which I received. And so that's technical rabbinical language for passing on tradition. So he's giving them a formal instruction.
And when you say tradition, people in America think tradition is almost like, well, it could be true, but it might not be true. It's just a tradition, but you don't mean that, right?
No, it's a very formalized training.
Okay.
So
it's more like a catechism, more
yes,
like a...
much like catechesis.
All right.
And actually in the New Testament, Romans 10:9, it uses the word confession. That's another example of these types of oral traditions. Oral traditions can just be a catch-all.
So it's a way of passing off historical and theological truth to someone who maybe even can't read. You can put it in a rhythmic way that they can understand it.
Yes, and they can recall it better. And Habermas uses the childhood rhymes that we would learn, like row your boat or something like that.
Jack and Jill went up the hill.
Yes, exactly. And in a oral culture, you have to have those sorts of things because people need to take it. And if you're trying to make disciples, you have to make sure that they know what's of first importance. And that's exactly what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, that Jesus died, he was buried, he was raised again, and then he was appeared to many people. So Paul's reminding them that he gave them this tradition. And then we go, well, where did Paul get this tradition? And in Galatians 1, it